So in this 9-part tutorial, I'm going to share with you the strategies and the step-by-step tactics needed to start, operate, and scale a digital marketing agency in 2022. Having just sold my 7-figure agency, which you can see there's a few Inc. 5000 plaques on the wall behind me. I owned it for 6 years. I learned a lot, and I am super stoked to share with you all of the things that I learned on my journey to building that agency into the business that it is, and which ultimately led to a very nice exit for me. So here's what we're going to cover in today's video. We're going to talk about goals and expectations. We've got a section called Beginning with the End in Mind, which is all about planning your exit before you start your business, which is something that almost nobody talks about. We're going to talk about the 3 most profitable services that I think you should choose one of to offer. We're going to talk about how to build your authority. We're going to talk about something called the Dream 100, and then we're going to talk about how to build an affordable remote team, how to get endless referrals, and finally, how you can scale your agency to 7 figures and beyond using systems and processes. So with that said, if you're ready to go, I'm ready to go. Let's dive into it. Are you tired of paying for a whole bunch of different sales and marketing softwares that are actually difficult to get to talk to each other? Would you like to have a much easier time capturing new leads, nurturing them, and then converting them into sales? Click the link below to check out Flowster Automate today. So in this first section, we're going to talk about goals and expectations. And the one thing I want to make abundantly clear is if you are desperate for quick cash or you're looking to get rich overnight or whatever, building a digital agency is not the path for you. It does take time, it does take effort. However, if you're smart about it, you can definitely achieve measurable and meaningful results in a relatively short period of time. So let's talk about how much money you can make. I started my agency full-time because I had other businesses before. If you are starting this, if you've either exited a business or you've quit your job or you have full-time for whatever reason, I think it's absolutely achievable for you to make over $10,000 a month within your first 90 days. In my case, within 5 months, we were doing over $100,000 a month in revenue. Now that's revenue, that's not profit. There's obviously a difference between the two. And your ability to do that, how fast you scale, is going to be super dependent on your business model, which we're going to talk a lot more about that later. The only hint I will give you is if you're going to start a full service agency from the beginning, that's kind of the kiss of death. So don't do that. Stay tuned because you need to understand why that's the kiss of death. And that's what almost everybody does, is start off with a full service agency, which is the worst thing you can do. All right, if you're part-time, I would say that a few $1,000s a month within 90 days is actually very doable. And in order to make that doable, you're going to have to really be focused on getting clients and then making the deliverables as lightweight, or in other words, requiring as little labor as possible. And again, in this tutorial, which is going to be much longer than my regular video because it's a full-on tutorial, we're going to talk more about that and what these services are and so forth. So stay tuned because that is coming up. All right, so now I want to talk about something that I called in the table of contents as the begin with the end in mind. And it's something that almost nobody talks about, but it's been written about in some very good books, and one of them is a book called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. It's a superb book, and I highly recommend you read it. You can probably read it in a single day, to be honest with you. And the concept is this: from day one, it's critically important that you design your business to run without you as best you can, because that will accomplish 2 super important things. Number 1, it will make owning the business, notice I said owning, not running. It'll make owning the business a lot more pleasurable and enjoyable and lucrative for you. And then if you succeed at this, which I absolutely did in my agency, because after 12 months, I had actually completely delegated myself out of all day-to-day responsibility, and I took hundreds of thousands of profit out in the years that went past that, and ultimately that's what makes a company sellable. If you take this approach of beginning with the end in mind and building the business to run without you, it's going to make your business wildly more valuable to another buyer. So at some point, if you decide that you want to exit that business, it's going to be much easier to do. Because if you take the opposite approach, which is very common in the solopreneur space, where you're kind of doing everything yourself, you've got no processes because you're just operating from habits and from memory, you've essentially stuck yourself in what I call a control trap. You've got control because you're the one twisting all the knobs and flipping all the switches and doing all the things, but nobody's ever going to want to buy that. You don't even have a business, to be honest with you. You just have a job. You're self-employed. So when you stop working, the money stops coming in, and that's no fun at all. And a lot of times I see these solos, they're working evenings, they're working weekends, because they are solidly stuck in what I call a control trap, because they didn't make the mental shift that I'm going to talk about later in this tutorial that is required to enable you to scale beyond how much time and effort you can put in. So you don't really want to trade your time for money, I guess is what I'm really trying to tell you, because you only have so much time. That means you can only make so much money. So read Built to Sell, understand the principles, and you'll be far better off for it. All right, in this section, we're going to talk about the 3, and it's actually going to be 4, most profitable types of services to offer. And let me preface all of that by saying, as I hinted at in the intro, if you start your agency like most people and you are starting off as a full service agency, it's kind of the kiss of death for a variety of reasons. I'll summarize those by saying, number 1, if you're not a specialist, you will have made it impossible for you to partner with other agencies. So what do I mean by that? So let's say that you decide that you're just going to provide hosted websites. That's the only thing that you do. Pre-built, templatized, hosted websites. Another agency, knowing that that's the only thing you do, probably would be okay with referring you business. Now, this is actually kind of a bad example, but I'll stick with it just the same. I mean, let's say that also, maybe instead of hosted websites, this is a better example, you just do ads on Instagram. So if they see that you just do ads on Instagram, they're more likely to refer you clients because you're not going to compete with them on all the other stuff that they offer in their full service business. So that's the point I'm trying to make. If you do everything, then you're not going to have any partnerships with other agencies, whereas if you're a specialist, then you're making it a lot easier for you to partner with other agencies. So having said all of that, let's get into the 3, which is actually now a secret, delivering more than I expected, 4 most profitable services that you can offer to your clients. Number 1, you can be a media company and you can sell them ads. So how do you do that? Well, let's say you live in a city and you decide, well, I'm going to start a website that talks all about the activities to do in my city. You do a good job of that, and you do a good job with your SEO, and your site over time starts to build and get more traffic. And matter of fact, you don't even have to start a site like that. You could literally just buy one if you can find one, but it doesn't matter. The principle is the same. And now you can go to local businesses, hotels, restaurants, and what have you that would want to sell to people who are coming to visit your town, and you can sell them ads in your copy, in your website. And as you might imagine, putting up an ad, not a lot of labor. So your gross margins are really high, and the more traffic that your site gets over time, the higher you're going to be able to charge for those ads. I mean, what I'm describing to you is essentially the business model of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and every other media company. So that is service number 1, is actually think of yourself as a media company. Now, let's say that for whatever reason, you don't want to do that. No, that's just not interesting to me for some reason. The second super scalable model, it's not the most scalable, but it's still very scalable, and that is the ad management business. The beauty of the ad management business is basically the way the model works is you're going to charge your clients a percentage of their ad spend to manage their ad campaigns on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or whatever platform. I would encourage in the beginning, it's just one platform so you can get really, really ninja at that one platform. But here's where the leverage kicks in. As your clients are seeing success and they are increasing their budgets, you're making more money, but you don't have to do a lot more work. Like as an example, if a client is spending, say, $10,000 a month on ads, and another client is spending $50,000 a month on ads, this client is probably not 5 times as much work as this client, but yet you're making 5 times as much money. So the ad management business model is pretty darn scalable. It's not the most scalable. Most scalable is number 4, so you have to wait for number 4. But it's pretty darn scalable. Number 3, which is the one that I was personally involved in my agency, is the Amazon brand management or reseller space. So in our case, what we did is we would find established brands that had established products that weren't marketed very well on Amazon, and that was very easy to do. We actually built a system for VAs to do that for us. And then we would approach those brands and we'd say, look, you've got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. We can fix all those problems for you for a percentage of sales if you're doing the Amazon brand management model. Or in our case, we did the reseller model, where instead of sending them an invoice, we made a different deal. We'd say, look, we'll just buy your product wholesale and we'll resell it retail on Amazon, and we'll make our money by buying and reselling the product. The end result is the same with either model, and which one you choose is entirely up to you. I think if I would have been more knowledgeable about brand management in the beginning, I might have done that instead of reselling. Especially these days, I think brand management is a smarter way to go. You don't need all the capital for inventory, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff which is beyond the scope of this video that would suggest that indicate to me that brand management is the better way to go. So the beauty of that model, of course, is this. It doesn't matter which way you do resell or brand management. What I'm about to explain still applies. There's a lot of upfront work, but the work tapers off. So optimizing a product listing, getting the ad campaign set up, having the right copy, the right images, all that good stuff. It's upfront work. But then over time, that work tapers down, but your income doesn't taper down. So over time, these relationships with your clients become more profitable, and you have to do less work, which is a good thing for you. So I would strongly encourage that you consider that. If you're interested in that, we actually have my software company, Flowster, has something called the Amazon Seller Playbook. It's a huge playbook of all the procedures that we built for all that stuff to run our own business, actually. And depending upon what plan you're on, it's actually potentially free for you as a paid Flowster user if you're on our enterprise plan. If you're not on our enterprise plan, you can actually just buy the playbook for a one-time fee, and then you'll have access and you won't have to create it from scratch. And then number 4 is, and I didn't know, if I had known about this years ago, I would have done this one. And because this one is definitely the most scalable, and it's going to lead to the longest term client relationships and the highest levels of profit. And that is to white label some software called HighLevel and basically turn your agency into a mini SaaS business. And I'm going to give you an example later in this tutorial of a company that did this and scaled to $40 million and is still growing like crazy. But some of the services that you can offer if you've decided to white label HighLevel software, and we have links down in the description if you want to learn more about this, because if you're going to use our affiliate link to sign up for HighLevel, we've got a whole bunch of really cool bonuses for you that you can't get anywhere else. But you can offer things like hosted websites, chat widgets on websites, no answer text back, which basically means if someone calls your client, they don't answer their phone, their potential customer gets a text back. Reputation management of a Google business page. There's a lot of stuff that you can do on HighLevel, which you can charge your clients a monthly fee for that has zero labor for you. And as you might imagine, zero labor is very scalable, because you don't ever have to worry about, hey, I don't have enough labor to be able to do that. And you get these fees for years instead of maybe just for months. And that is going to make for a much, much more lucrative business model for you. So again, if that is appealing to you, and if I was starting over today, that is absolutely the one that I would do. I would check out the links that we've placed for you down in the description. All right, in this section, I want to talk about quick ways, not necessarily quick, but important ways for you to build your authority to make it easier for you to get clients. Now, as I just finished talking about in the previous section, if you are taking the approach where you're turning your agency into a little SaaS business, having this authority is ironically a little bit less important, because now you're not so much selling a service as you're selling a product. Like reputation management, hey man, there's the software, it just works. Or no answer text back, you can literally just demonstrate it and it works. And so less authority is needed to be able to do that. Having said that, it's still super important for you to make sure that you walk the walk. If you're going to be a digital marketer and you're going to run a digital agency of any kind, regardless of your business model, the very first thing you have to have is a really great website. If you have an average website, or worse yet, a crappy website, that is going to kill your positioning. So don't do what I did when I started and designed the website yourself. Yes, you probably can do that, but no, unless you're a professional designer, you probably shouldn't do that. And these days, it's so inexpensive to get a professional designer to do the work for you. As an example of that, my Bright Ideas site, which I've always managed and built myself, I finally got it through my thick skull that I shouldn't try and be the designer anymore. So I found somebody on Upwork in India and I said, look, I'll pay you $150 to do a mock-up. He did it in Photoshop. A lot of guys do it in Figma, whatever. The mock-up was gorgeous, like way better. Like, well, one round of minor little revisions. So for $150, I've got this beautiful design, new homepage, which looks way better than anything I could have ever done, no matter how many hours I spent. And then for another $150, he's actually going to take that design and make it live on the site. So for $300, I've got a fantastic new version of my brightideas.co website. It wasn't ugly before, but it definitely was nowhere near as good as what it's going to be when this design gets rolled out. So that is super critical, because people are going to come to your website and they're going to decide within 2 or 3 seconds if you look credible or not. If you have a crappy looking website, even if you're using high-level software and positioning your agency as a mini SaaS business, if you have a crappy looking website, it's over. So in addition to having a great looking website, there are 3 other things, and I would encourage that you pick at least one of them and make it an ongoing part of your business development strategy. And that's either host a blog, write blog content, record YouTube videos, or host a podcast. I've done all of them. I think hosting a podcast is probably the easiest, but it's not the most effective for attracting new eyeballs. That's where blogging, written text blogs and YouTube videos are much more powerful. That's exactly why I do videos like the one I'm doing now, is they're very, very good for attracting new people to your funnels. So make sure that you're doing at least one of those. And then finally, if you've chosen as your business model the media business that I talked about, where basically you're building up a website for traffic so that you can sell ads, well, obviously your analytics are your authority. You can simply show people and say, look, my traffic is going up and to the right. I know what I'm doing. If I did this for me, I could do it for you as well. But honestly, I wouldn't want to necessarily be building a media site for somebody else. Instead, just sell them ads on yours, because it's far more profitable to do it that way. All right, in this section, we're going to talk about the Dream 100. Where I learned this is a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine by a guy by the name of Chet Holmes, who's since passed. The book has outlasted him. It's become a legacy. It's a super famous book. I would highly encourage that you read it. And in that book is where I first learned about something called the Dream 100. This is your list of the 100 perfect clients that you would like to have. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't know who those people are. So a few bits of advice for you. Number one, if you're going to start your agency, start it in your own town. Unless you live in a little tiny itty bitty town where there are no clients, start and only sell in your own market. That will make building your Dream 100 far easier. In addition to, so that's a level of niching down, having just your home market. But then niche down even further. And by the way, this Dream 100 might start off as a Dream 25, but the whole idea here is to be very focused on who you're pursuing in the beginning. So maybe your Dream 25 is all the HVAC companies in your town, or all the dentists in your town, or whatever it is, the niche that is of interest to you. But the smaller your niche, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to be able to create this thing called an echo chamber. So, hello, 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 hello. The whole idea of an echo chamber is to be focused in such an area that's small enough so that everybody in that chamber is going to quickly know who you are. So let me give you an example. If you're selling to just HVAC in your town, then and you offer a service which is maybe non-competitive among the HVAC companies. So maybe a better example would be, restaurants in your town. The point is this, and even HVAC, it doesn't matter. All the people who are in HVAC in your town, they all know who each other are. This is the point I'm trying to make. They all know who each other are. And if you're doing great work, let's say there's 20 of them, and you've managed to get 2 of them, the chances of you getting 3, 4, 5 of them are significantly higher than if you're trying to pursue any business anywhere in North America. Because the owners of any business anywhere in North America, they don't know each other. So there's no echo chamber. Whereas all the HVAC owners in your town, they all know each other. A lot of the dentists in your town, they all know each other. If you're doing really, really great work, they're much more likely, either by way of referral or simply by way of social proof, for you to be able to get the rest of them. A part of that, of course, is making sure, and this you can only do this if you're staying in your own home market, is to give a really high kind of white glove level of service. That's going to result in more referrals. So let me give you an example of all of this to make sure that you really understand the point I'm trying to make. There's a company called Patient Pop. They're about a $40 million agency these days. But when they started off, the only thing they offered is websites to the doctors in their hometown. That was it. And then once they dominated their hometown, they started to build a sales force and they started to expand in other cities. And today they're a $40 million business. So if that's not proof enough of the importance of being super focused in a small niche, ideally in your hometown, I don't know what better of an example that I could give you. All right, in this section of the tutorial, we're going to talk about building a team. And the first piece of advice that I have for you is to read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I read the book back in about 2004, and it forever changed my thinking about how I run, how I am a business owner. I didn't want to say how I own a business, but and the reason the book is so incredibly important is it talks a lot about technicians versus, and I forget what the other word is, but we're just going to call them owners. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a great chef, or you're really good at baking. You're really good at baking cakes or pastries or whatever. And so you decide, hey, I'm so good at this. I love this so much. I'm going to start a bakery. Well, the problem is that just because you're good at baking cakes doesn't mean you're good at running a bakery. Because as you might imagine, baking cakes is a very different set of skills than running a successful bakery. So if you're the founder, you need to make this transition, and the sooner you can make this in your mind, the better off you're going to be, of being an owner versus being a technician. You don't want to be the one turning all the knobs and flicking all the switches. That's what you need a team for. Now, this can be very daunting or overwhelming for new entrepreneurs because they've never hired anybody before. And in the next section, I'm going to show you exactly how we hire. The very first person that I think you should hire is a virtual assistant. You'd be amazed at how much, I've been hiring them now for 12 years. You'd be amazed at how helpful they can be and how incredibly affordable they are, and then you don't even have to hire them full-time from the get-go. You can simply start, as I did, with someone on a part-time basis. But there's two things that are a really important part of this idea of building a team. Number one is you are going to have to document your processes. The biggest mistake I see people making when they're trying to hire a VA for the first time is they're trying to hire a VA with the right experience in whatever it is that they want them to do. And invariably, that VA was taught somebody else's bad habits. They're now bringing those bad habits into your business because you didn't provide them with a standard operating procedure on how you want it done. And then they're not producing the results that you want, and you're mad and they're mad, and the whole thing goes south. So you absolutely need to document your processes. Now, we have a free tool that you can use for that. It's called Flowster Capture. It's a Chrome extension. There will be a link down in the description for Flowster Capture, and it is kind of what I would call a replacement for Loom. A lot of people will use Loom to create training for somebody to do something for them, and I'll put a link in the description as well to the Loom video. There's a video that I produced called Why Loom Sucks for Creating SOPs. I would encourage that you watch that. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. Just know that Loom is not, it's better than nothing, but it is not the most effective way to make your SOPs. Flowster Capture is a whole lot better, and they're both free, so why not choose the better one? And then once you've got all of that documentation for your procedures, you're going to find that delegating work to your team gets a lot easier to do, and that is going to be critical for your ability to scale your business. You absolutely must be able to build a team. In this section, we're going to talk about how to hire your first virtual assistant. This is something that I've been doing for 12 years. We've done it over and over and over. We've done it for our clients, and we have it down to a science. Down in the description below, there will be a link to the checklist. It's a free checklist that you can have. So if you don't want to take notes, or you just want to skip this section of the video, everything that I'm about to explain to you verbally is in that checklist. You can get a free copy of it, and then all you need to do is follow it. Okay, the first thing you do, obviously, post your job ad. We use Upwork and we use onlinejobs.ph. Those are the two places that we have the most success with. If you're posting your job ad on both sites, the very first problem you're going to have is managing all the applicants. So the way that we manage those applicants is we build an application form on Google Forms, and we say in the ad, or when we communicate with them, that you have to go fill out that Google form. That way you've got one source, one place where you can manage all of your applicants. The next thing is, for whatever the job is that you're hiring for, you need to make sure that you already have a standard operating procedure. In other words, a set of documentation on how to do that thing. So, because it's going to be critical in the hiring process, which I'll explain to you in just a minute or two more. The second thing is, in your job post, make sure you put what we call a code word in there. You want to make sure that you're only considering applications from people who've read the entire job application and follow directions. So you might say something to the effect of, hey, in the first sentence or in the subject line, whatever, make sure you put the word blueberry in there. And if they don't, then you know they just skim read, they don't follow instructions, and you don't need to pay any attention at all to that particular application. So now you've got your applications that have come through your Google form. They've all got the word blueberry in them, and you're going to pick 5, and you're just going to hire them all to do the thing one time. So I'll pay them $5 or $10, whatever the right amount of fee is for how much time it would take them to do this thing. I then assign them the checklist and sit back and just wait. And the 5, invariably what will happen is 1 or 2 of those 5 will do the thing faster, better, with fewer questions. Those are the people you want to hire. Just pick the very best one and then onboard them properly. And you should create an SOP for onboarding. I'm not even sure if we have one of those. I know we have one internally, but you could go to the Flowster marketplace and just type in onboarding and see what comes up. We might have a free checklist for this that's been published. I'm not sure, but make sure you onboard them properly so they get a good experience coming into your organization. If you don't have an SOP, and if we don't have one, you should make one, because you're going to hire more than one person. You want them all to be onboarded in the same way. And then the last piece of advice I have for you is this: for your very first hire, pay a little extra and hire someone who could become your senior VA in the future. This is what we've done. It works very well for us. Now our senior VA, in this case her name is Des, she's been with us for years, she hires all the other VAs. She manages a lot of those VAs. So by making your first hire someone who's got kind of manager talent or manager aptitude, you're going to save yourself a lot of grief later on. So for that first hire, pay an extra $1 to $2 per hour. Get someone who's a little bit more senior. You'll be far better off for it. All right, guys, in this section, we're going to talk about how to maximize referrals. There's a couple of very specific strategies that I have for you. Strategy number one is to always deliver, not always, wherever you can, deliver more than you promised. So if the contract says you get this thing, and this thing, give them this other thing as well. When you give people more than they expect, they're going to be surprised and delighted and feel indebted to you. You've heard of the principle of reciprocity. When you do something nice for me, I feel obligated to do something nice for you. You want to make sure that your clients feel obligated to do something nice for you, and that something nice for you ideally should be a referral. Number two, visit your clients. Remember I talked about selling into your own town? Now the exception is if your town is so small that it doesn't work, then this isn't going to work. But if you live in a city, make sure that you're spending time visiting your clients. Show up with donuts, show up with coffees, build rapport, get to know these people on a personal level. Give them that white glove level of service. One, they'll never leave you. Two, it'll be really hard for a competitor to steal them away. And number three, they are much more likely to give you referrals. So to summarize, deliver more than you promised, visit your clients, build rapport with them, and then ask for referrals. Say, hey, I wanted to let you know that I'm looking for two. Don't just say, hey, do you know anybody? Too vague, be specific. I wanted to let you know that I'm looking for 2 more dentists, if that's your niche, who need a better website. Could you introduce me to a couple of the other dentists in town that you know? When you're specific like that, you're making it far easier for people to think, oh yeah, well, you know, I could refer him to John, and I could refer him to Mary, or whatever. So be specific in your ask. All right, guys, we've come to the very last and most important section of my tutorial, and that is how to scale to 7 figures. So there's going to come a time in your business when you've got a handful of clients that the hardest part isn't finding new clients. Instead, the hardest part is keeping up with all the work, and ideally finding people to train to do the work for you. And there comes this, there's a sweet spot where you're pretty busy, but you're not so busy that you're fully maxed out. That is the right time to start hiring. Ideally, even before then, that is the latest that you should be adding people to your team. Because here's what's going to happen. If you go past that because you've been too much of a control freak and you're doing it all yourself, and you didn't want to pay anybody else, or whatever your reasons were, you're so frantically now trying to keep your clients happy that you literally can't spend any extra time to find, hire, and train somebody else to join your team. And so you're going to be stuck in that solopreneur space, and your revenue's not going to go up anymore. And eventually you're going to drop the ball, and you're going to piss off a client, and you're going to lose one, or, you know, there's going to be some other price to pay because now you're just working way too hard. I've met people in this position, and it's really sad, because they are now a slave to their business. All the fun is gone, and their health goes because they're not exercising, their relationships go because they're not investing time in those relationships. Do me a favor, don't ever do that to yourself. Think of your business like a business and not just a paycheck. Put off buying that new boat, or that new car or whatever, and put more money back into your business. And the way that you do this is you start hiring other people. Now, in case it's not already obvious, you will have the most amount of success hiring other people if you have systems and documentation for the work that you want them to do. And that's exactly what my software company is for. It's called Flowster. There'll be a link in the description. I am obsessed with delegating. In my agency, as I mentioned to you earlier in this video, I actually stopped working there after 12 months. The only reason I was able to delegate myself out of all day-to-day operations was that because I was obsessed with documentation and creating a culture of documentation, so that as we added more people to the team, training was almost non-existent because we had great documentation that showed them exactly what they were supposed to do. This is what the Flowster Capture extension can help you do. This is what the Flowster software app can help you do to create that documentation. So let me give you an example. When I started my agency, we didn't have any clients, and I knew we were going to have to prospect like crazy. And so rather than starting to invest my time into prospecting like crazy, I instead built a prospecting system. I just thought about, well, what's the first step of the system? In our case, it was find suitable brands on Amazon. Okay, that's pretty linear. So I wrote a document on exactly how to do that. And then the next step of the system was find the company that makes those products on Amazon. And then the next step was find the person who is ideally probably the decision maker and get their name and their contact information off of LinkedIn. And then the next step was send them an email. So that was 4 steps. I created an SOP for each of those 4 steps. I then hired virtual assistants to be my SDRs, and they did all of that stuff for me. And the net result of that was that my calendar was stuffed full of prospect meetings every single week. And I did this because I knew that I needed to stay in my genius zone. So your genius zone is the thing that you're probably the best in your company, and it makes you the most money. In my case, it was closing deals. I was the best sales guy on the team. I was the only sales guy on the team at that point in time, and nobody could close the deals better than me. But prospecting, anybody can prospect if you have a system. So I didn't really need to do all of that myself. And so at one point, I think I had, if memory serves me correctly, 6 different VAs were a part of my SDR team. And that was why we were able to get to 100 grand a month within 5 months and $1 million in our first year. That's why I got those 2 5,000 plaques on the wall behind me, number 254 and number 622, because I was completely obsessed with staying in my genius zone. And after doing that for 12 months, I realized, you know what? I don't need to be the guy pitching and closing anymore. So I replaced myself in what had become the only job I had left in the company, the pitcher and the closer. And suddenly now I didn't have anything to do. And it was great. And I went on to start Flowster as a result of that. And I went on and became a real estate investor. And I did other stuff with my time, which ended up making me even quite a bit more money. But my point is this: if you don't make the decision to document your systems and to start to build an affordable remote team, you'll never get to 7 figures. It's just, I mean, unless you're just a freak of nature, maybe you're doing something super special that I've never heard of, but I don't know anybody who runs a 7-figure agency and they're a solo. It is, by my definition of the world, impossible to do. So you have to and the last point I want to leave you with is, make this easy on yourself by understanding the value of your time. If you're currently a solo, and you're making $100,000 per year in profit, and divide that by the 2,000 hours you work. So whatever that is, $50 an hour, if I'm doing the math right in my head. I'm probably not, but maybe I am. So your time's worth $50 an hour. If you can hire a VA to take work off of your plate and they cost you $4 an hour, why on earth wouldn't you do that? You're worth 50, they're worth 4. Every hour of yours that you free up, like, you get it? The math is really, really simple. But not very many people think about it like that, especially when they're new entrepreneurs. All they're thinking of, oh, I'm going to do everything myself. Keep my expenses as low as possible, going to do everything myself. And, you know, maybe like for the first week or 3, no, not even for that. Like I said, I didn't even do it that way. I hired VAs from day one. VAs, they're not expensive. You don't have to employ them full time. You can have as many as you want. They can all be part-time. So your financial risk of doing so is really, really slim, really small. and your leverage is so much higher. So I'm going to wrap up this tutorial by saying, stay in your genius zone. Your genius zone is building the systems, is closing the deals, is putting the people in place so that your business can run without you. And then you will have built a super scalable agency. So I want to thank you very much for watching. There's a bunch of links in the description to get more information. If you have questions, leave them down below. My question for you is, if you've just watched this, what town are you in? Leave that down in the comments for me below. I'd love to see where you're located. Thank you very much for watching. It has been my pleasure. If you've enjoyed this video, there's lots more on the channel, and I would encourage you to watch some of those as well. Take care. Bye-bye.